Are you struggling finishing tracks? Let's talk about that today. As you can see, we're in a project here and I've just laid out all of the projects that I'm currently working on. These are all of the tracks that I'm currently working on but that I haven't finished yet. Now, as you can see, there's some coloring happening here. I have color-coded these on the different kind of categories or stages that they're in, and that's actually a very, very important part of it. What I want to talk about today really comes down to a system to get you to just naturally finalize tracks. One of the reasons why I say this is because when I'm doing my feedback streams, most of the tracks that people submit aren't actually finished. They tend to be either very early in the production stage, or people say like, this track is finished, but I still need to do the mixing and the mastering. But to be honest, it feels like code for saying, if you hear any mistakes, don't worry about those, I'm still going to fix those. Now, of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does show you the problem that we're dealing with in that people don't really finish tracks. They're always still like looking out for, oh, can I fix this? Can I fix that? Is there something else that I can do? Is there something else that I can improve? And if you continuously do that, you're never going to finish anything. So let's quickly talk about the system that I have in place. Right now, I am producing this track right here. This is a dark gray track. This is the track that I'm currently working on in the production phase. Then next up, I have 3 tracks that are currently on hold, but that they still plan on finishing and changing up. These are tracks that either need a lot more production. As you can see, this track is just not finished. It just kind of abruptly ends here. Or that need reworking in another way. In that I like the idea, I want to take the idea, but I really need to transform the idea into something new. There's a lot of production work that still needs to happen. Even though this might look like a finished track from start to finish, and this one as well, this one is in fact even mastered. I need to take that idea and really transform it into something new before I can actually, be happy with the track that I have. Then there's the biggest groups of tracks here. This is the tracks where I only need to really worry about the details of the production anymore before I can go into mixing. This is where I have to listen to it 1 or 2 more times, make some small changes to the production, maybe move an element here or there, maybe replace 1 or 2 elements, stuff like that. Very simple, very basic stuff that I would be able to do in maybe 2 or 3 hours. Usually what I end up doing is listening to the track a lot in my free time whenever I have the chance to do so, and really just kind of like write down mental notes of what I actually want to do with the track in order for it to be finished. One important criteria for this to work though is that all of the general ideas of the tracks do work, and I like all of the general ideas of the tracks. With that I mean stuff like theming, the main elements, the main synth sounds, the kick and bass, stuff like that. The real important stuff of the track. As I said, there are some details that still need fixing, but the overarching idea of the track is still nice. And honestly, I could probably get away with just releasing the track as it is, obviously mixed and mastered. But in terms of production, in terms of creating sounds and putting them in the track, it is properly finished. It just needs detailed work. Now, real quick, before we continue, I do quickly want to say that if you want to support this channel, make sure that you're subscribed and that you like the video. Also, if you want to support me financially, you can do so by checking out my products on Gumroad. These are including sample packs, preset packs, and all of that kind of stuff. You can also check out my Patreon page, where you'll find early access to videos, as well as priority for feedback streams. Links for both of those are going to be in the description. Now let's get back into the video. Then there's the next stage where everything about the production is finished. I'm completely happy with all of the details and I can go into mixing. What I generally tend to do is leave a track for a good couple of months actually for me to really forget the sound of the track. I don't listen to it. I don't keep those mental notes around. I don't have any notes on the track, even like in my actual notebook and stuff like that. I really want to forget the track so that I can export for mixing and really start redefining the mix and not be influenced by the production stage. So just to give you an idea, this track I finished in September, and right now I could go into mixing this track. I have some other work that I need to do first, some other tracks that I need to finish first. One of them is this track, which is currently in the mixing mastering stage. I kind of call it the mixing mastering stage because for this track I'm actually experimenting with mastering in the project where I also do my mixing. Usually what I used to do is I would do my mixing and then I would export it again and then open a new project for my mastering. Before this track, what I used to do is really divide it up into 3 clear stages: the production, the mix, and then the master. And obviously one follows the other and you need to finish one stage before you can move on to the next. Now, I think I mentioned this before in a recent video as well. The reason why I actually do this, why I export all of the sounds, import them into a new project, into a new DAW, all of that stuff takes a lot of time, including learning the new DAW that I'm using for that. The reason why I do that is because I really want to shift my mindset from production into mixing. If I were to just open the project file in which I'm producing, for example, this track here, I would be influenced by all of the effects that are still on there, all of the volume balances, everything about that production. I would be influenced by that production. I don't want to do that. So what I'll do is I'll export all of the sounds one by one into their own unique files, import them into a Reaper project where I can mix them, and I'll actually normalize all of the tracks so all of the volume balances are removed. To be honest, if there's one tip that I can give you to improve your mixes, it would be that, to export your sounds and import them into a new project. Every time I do this, I notice a noticeable increase in like my mix. Just the quality of the mix and the way that all of the elements are defined and the overall balance, like everything about the track just becomes a lot better if I do it this way, as opposed to just looking at the production mix. Obviously, when I'm producing, I try to keep like a decent mix going, but I'm mostly spur of the moment, trying to add sounds quickly, trying to add ideas quickly, and knowing that I'm going to export and redo the mix anyway, I tend to forget a little bit about the mix. So that's going to be part of it, but the main reason why that happens is because when you forget the track and when you let it rest for a while and then you re-import it and you have to re-establish all of the balances, you have to rethink and you have to reanalyze all of the elements and have to kind of decide like, okay, what do they actually need to do? What is actually the purpose of all of these elements? And that's essentially what mixing is all about. So when it comes to finishing tracks actually and really forcing yourself to finish tracks, what you essentially want to do is you want to make sure that, mentally speaking, you're never going to move back up to an older color. You can essentially see it as like 3 or 4 groups. In this case, I would say that this is one of the main groups. This is the stuff that needs a lot of production work still, right? We have the current production that I'm working on. As you can see towards the end of the waveform, you can see that there's just stuff missing, there's no outro, stuff like that. As I said, these 2 tracks, this one and this one, need major rework, so I need to redo the idea. I like to maybe take part of the idea and develop something else around it, whereas this one just isn't finished yet. I need to write the rest of the track actually. But these tracks will never go back into this stage. I'll never force myself to say like, okay, I'm no longer happy with the idea of this track. I've now committed to this idea and I want to finish it. So there's never going to be a scenario in which I'm going to basically move this track back in here and, color it differently and make it so that I need to rework the track and do still a lot of production. Once I decide like, okay, this is part of the detail stuff, it is going to be white and it's going to be part of the detail stuff, and I'm going to be moving towards working to making it green and then blue and, trying to finish the track. The same is true for the mixing. There might be 1 or 2 production-related things that I still need to fix that I only discover in the mix. I will fix those, obviously. Like in this case, I had a bass line that had some issues. I had one vocal that had some issues. This is actually the same track that I based my mixing tips video on that. So if you saw that video, then you'll know what I'm talking about. Those small things, I'll go back into the production and fix them and then re-export that individual track. But I'll never go back in here and start making big production changes. I've committed to this being what the track is supposed to be in terms of all of the elements that are in there. Now I just need to balance them and make them sound good. Now there's a little bit of a mindset that you need to have for this to work. One of the things that you really need to realize is that the listener is never going to hear the things that you didn't do. They're only going to hear the production decisions and the mixing decisions and the mastering decisions that you did make. So while you're stressing out about, okay, this one detail thing that is not right sitting in the track, maybe just if it's not right in the track, delete it, not have a detail thing there, and just worry about the general idea. I get a lot of producers asking me about like, okay, I'm just starting out this production and I don't like the kick and bass and I've made a few elements and I like the elements, but the kick and bass is not sitting right and I don't know if I can finish this track. And you have to remember when it comes to finishing tracks, those things don't really matter. That it's not going to leave an impression on the listener that is listening to the track for the first time. What is going to matter to the listener that listens to it for the first time is like the general idea of the track. Does it capture them from just a musical perspective? There's kind of like this famous meme in the production community about EQing the snare, like this guy spending hours EQing the snare. The truth of the matter is nobody is going to stop dancing to your track because the snare lacks like 1 dB at 2 kilohertz or something like that. That's never going to happen. So you don't really have to worry about that, especially if you're in these stages, because you're going to fix it in this stage. I think one of the biggest things that hold people back is that they're expecting when they're writing a production that they would get mixed level quality stuff. And that's just not the case. The reason why a mixed and mastered track sounds so good is because it was produced, mixed and mastered, and you're still in the production stage. You're still trying to get ideas out there. Once all of the ideas are in there, then you can start to think about the balancing and how everything should sound and all of those details. Then you can start to worry about, okay, does this snare really need to sound like that, or does it actually need that 1 dB cut or boost at 2 kHz that I talked about before? If you start worrying about all of that detail stuff in here in this stage, you're never going to get out of this stage. You're always going to have gray and dark gray tracks. Another thing that this video should show you is how many projects I'm currently working on. I am always working on like roughly 10 projects like this. I always like to have a lot of different things that I can fall back on. Maybe I'm not feeling creative for this production project. Okay, fine, I'll work on the mix, or I'll start exporting these tracks, or I'll start doing the details for these tracks, or I'll start continuing the production for this track, or I'll start reworking one of these tracks. I have so many options when it comes to when I'm not feeling like this exact track, that I don't have to force myself working on that track. A big benefit of this is that you always have a little bit of backup to like fall on. If you want to release something and you want to say like, okay, for the next month, I want to do a release. I just want to have something that I can push out, that I can show the world, that I can share with people. Then having a couple of tracks where you say, okay, these are almost done. These are in the detail phase, or I just need to export them like that. Or I just need to finalize the mix here. This is the first mix master that I did, so I'll probably need to do a little bit of more tweaking, but then it's finished. Then you have something in the back that you can just push out. If you only have tracks that are like small ideas and you stop because you don't feel creative anymore, or you're just still in this phase here where you're producing it, but it's not quite finished yet, then there's always this pressure, like if I want to release something this month, one, I have to completely finish this track, which I don't have any finished track, so I don't know how to do that. And two, it's just a lot more work getting from this stage to this stage and beyond to like an actual final master. And that takes me to my final point that I wanted to make, and that's just to do it. When it comes to finishing tracks, you at some point just need to start forcing yourself, because if you never finish tracks, you don't know what it's like to finish a track. And you just need to trust me in the fact that your production will get better if you do some mixing and mastering. If you dedicate yourself to just sit down, analytically listen to all of the things that you're doing and to just balance out the elements, whatever idea that you're currently saying like, I'm not quite sure about it, it will come out and it will shine through in the way that you want it to. Again, I highly recommend waiting a little bit, letting the idea kind of settle, get out of your mind, wait a couple of months before you actually start working on the mix. And of course, exporting into a new DAW so that you're not influenced by the actual production. But trust me when I say that you will go from, oh, this track sounds kind of nice, I like these ideas a little bit, I think I can make these ideas work, to, oh my god, this is so good, this is such a nice track, I'm so happy that I did this. It happens every time when I finalize a master that the ideas that I have just come out and they shine through, because I dedicate myself a little bit in terms of the mixing to just balancing out the ideas and making sure that they all have the space that they need. And the fact of the matter is, if you're in these stages here, and even still kind of in these stages when you're still working on like small details and stuff, you cannot really make those decisions yet. You really have to wait and step back and forget the track before you can actually go into making proper decisions about how to balance a track. So that's everything for today. I hope that this video was helpful. I know a lot of people struggle with finishing tracks, and I hope that these tips do help with that. So that's going to be it. I hope to see you in the next video. Bye bye.
It's impossible to tell.